OwnBet.com, #1 MMA sportsbook in the world. They offer the best UFC odds, live betting, and covers all big MMA promotions with huge prop markets and odds. OwnBet also runs an exclusive MMA pick'em for UFC events. Parlay each event and win up to $2,500 in cash. Entry fee is only $1 for each bet slip. Use promo code FIGHT SOCIETY and get the best MMA bonus out there, 200% bonus. Sign up today at OwnBet.com. That's OwnBet, OHMBET.com.
All systems go. Check it out.
You're listening to Fight Society with Damon Martin and Jeremy Loper.
Check it out.
Hey, what's up, Fight Society Nation? Oh, we shouldn't even get on that train. I feel like everybody that has anything is like, they try to attach a nation to it. We probably shouldn't even do that.
I don't think there should be another nation after Nation of Domination.
Well, I mean, I think they said it all. We are the nation of domination.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Dude, this weekend I had the event over at this place called Sirens here in Columbus, which is an adult club, and we do our UFC watch parties there. It's called UGNO, Ultimate Guys Night Out. And if you are in the Ohio region, if you can make it anywhere in the Midwest, I do every UFC pay-per-view. So if you're a fan of the podcast and you listen and you want to come out, we will be there for the next UFC pay-per-view.
And that's a big one, too, because that's Bisping and GSP, the UFC 217. That's a big one.
I can't even believe this is really happening. Like, to say George St. Pierre back on pay-per-view with the UFC that's just in itself is crazy. But this week, dude, a couple of people that listened to the podcast came by.
That's awesome.
And I think that's pretty remarkable. You know, for the most part, it was a majority of the listeners that listen to my radio show that's broadcast here in the central Ohio area on 99.7 The Blitz. But it was a great deal of people that came out, or I should say a few people, you know, soon to be a great deal, I imagine.
Well, you also have to remember we're more of a nationwide podcast, so we don't, it's harder to stay localized.
I like to think people travel, Damon. And anyhow, so
people road trip for that thing.
The weird thing about Columbus, especially if you have kids playing sports, you might find yourself here. So if you do, I'm just saying, we have parties every once in a while.
Yeah.
This weekend, speaking of that watch party, the 216 pay-per-view did not disappoint, man.
It was a good show. Good fights.
Leading into the pay-per-view is doom and gloom. I mean, Black Beast.
Yeah.
Drops out last. How often do people weigh in and then drop out of the fight?
Yeah, not very often. I mean, it's very rare that you see something like that day of the fight. I mean, it's happened, but yeah, I woke up with his back locked up. I talked to his manager on Saturday, and obviously he was brokenhearted. The whole team was brokenhearted. Derek was brokenhearted. And, I mean, there's just nothing you can do about it. It's the same back problem he's had for a while now. He had it going into the Mark Hunt fight he talked about.
Did he say he was brokenhearted?
His manager said he was brokenhearted. He was
because
really
I feel like
bummed.
that is a super Southern. He's from Texas, so I feel like that is a super Southern thing to say.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm just brokenhearted.
Yeah. I mean, bummed. I mean, like I said, man, it was a big fight, big opportunity for him. And
one of my favorites, maybe my favorite in the heavyweight division outside of Stipe. Obviously, we're in Ohio. Got to be real. Up and comers though. You talk about up and comers, and it's weird to even talk about him like that. But serious contender for the championship eventually. Derek Lewis. I love to watch him fight, and I was legit, man, when I was driving to Sirens, I was like, dude, Black Beast.
Yeah, it was a bummer to find that out.
It ruins it, because then I can't run around the bar going, who wants to see the Black Beast? The chicks love that.
Yeah, it was disappointing. That was disappointing. We lost Nick Lentz and Will Brooks. That was another fight that fell off the day before.
That kind of got overshadowed by...
Yeah, well, that wasn't as big of a fight. I mean, Fabricio Verdum and Derek Lewis was the third fight down that was the next fight from the two title fights. So it was kind of like the third featured bout on the pay-per-view. Former champion, obviously, with Verdum, Derek Lewis, the top 6 guy in the world, top 7 guy in the world. So, yeah, it's a big loss when you lose something like that. And, kudos to Walt Harris for stepping up, taking the opportunity. Didn't work out too well for him. But, hey, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You know what I mean?
You're talking about the number 3 guy against a guy that is so not even ranked. It's ridiculous.
But, good for him. Take a shot. You know what I mean? He had nothing to lose, because guess what? No one's gonna hold that against him.
How many active guys on the UFC heavyweight roster?
Someone put out a number recently of all the roster spots for all the different divisions.
Guys. Yeah, I'm so curious, because as we're talking about that, what was his name? I forgot the guy's name. Yeah, Walt Harris. So if Walt Harris was going to be ranked, and you had to rank just because you had, let's say, I know they don't, but let's say they had 30 guys in the division, right?
Yeah.
They don't. if they did, where would Walt Harris be? That's my only question.
Probably around like 17 or 18, something like that. 18.
Yeah, so I told my wife, Randy, she was sitting next to me. I'm sorry, right before I left the house because she didn't make it this week. I was go, hey, listen.
That's how Loper was able to get the lap dances at the club. He's like, the wife's not here.
Oh, boy.
Hop on board.
Hop on board is ridiculous. The girls at the club like my wife more than they like me. So, yeah, that's not going to work. But anyhow, so I told her, I said, listen, if he is able to beat Verdum, like that changes that dude's life forever. Like he stepped up short notice. And of course, Verdum's got the out of like, it's short notice. But the last time that I was thinking to myself, the last time we saw somebody get this opportunity was, of course, with Daniel Cormier and who's that? A Starbucks employee?
Yeah.
That was.
But even that wasn't. That was.
Patrick
that was
Cummings.
that was short notice, but it wasn't even like this short of notice. Walt Harris was fighting on the same card.
The same card, right?
He was fighting at Mark Godbeer, and so it's not.
Which is a awesome name, man.
What this reminded me of, honestly, like in terms of like just like the most bonkers kind of switch out of like things going to happen, was reminded me of. And we just passed the 9-year anniversary of this with Seth Petrozelli stepping up to fight Kimbo Slice.
Yeah, right.
Ken Shamrock was supposed to fight him. He got a cut or something that day.
Do you remember when he came out? Everybody was like, Are you kidding? This dude might work Kimbo. Like, are you guys sure about this?
And Petrozelli goes out there and knocks him out in like 11 seconds, and that was the end, pretty much the end of Elite XC, that knockout.
That was it, yeah.
That was the end of Elite XC because Kimbo was the star, and Kimbo got knocked out. And that was pretty much the end of it. And I don't know Seth. Seth's actually a really good guy. You know where Seth works at these days.
Where's that?
He is a trainer at the WWE Performance Institute.
You know what? I think his name has come up before and you mentioned that. I think that's cool, man.
Yeah, it's not his full-time job. He has his own gym down in Orlando, but he does that like 3 days a week.
Yeah, what's he train at? What is that called? The Zoo?
Yeah, the Jungle.
The Jungle.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's a nice gym, man.
Yeah.
They have a couple locations
he has a couple.
Orlando.
And he also owns some Smoothie Kings or Smoothie.
Oh, in Orlando?
Yeah, he owns a couple smoothie places down there, too.
That's right. People want to go and roll and do some stand-up.
So he's got a smoothie place, but yeah, he's a striking coach at the WWE Performance Institute.
And who do I want that smoothie from? The motherfucker that knocked out Kimbo Slice. That's
Exactly.
who on goddamn CBS.
Hold on, can I get some banana with that guy who knocked out Kimbo Slice?
2 protein scoops. Yeah.
Let me get some bee pollen in that smoothie.
I don't know why we're yelling. It's Petrozelli. It's rude. I feel like, yes, high-level athlete.
You knocked out Kimbo, now knock out my smoothie.
Yeah, I know that. You did something remarkable. Were you yelling at him now, like ordering him around the kitchen? Yeah.
So that's kind of like the only thing I could think of. But obviously it didn't go nearly as well for Walt Harris as it did for Seth Petrozelli because he got tapped out with an arm bar in about 1:30. But there's no shame in that. You know what? And the other thing is kudos to Fabricio Verdum because we've seen it. And listen, I say this all the time. Never fault a guy or a girl for turning down a short notice fight because when you spend weeks and weeks and weeks getting ready for an opponent and then they fall out, and we're talking about, short notice when I'm talking about like a week or 2 weeks, obviously with like 6 weeks to go, you should, take the opponent.
Yeah, for sure.
But, when you have, when you're talking a week or in this case, literally hours, if he would have said, no, I don't want to fight, I would have said, you know what? That's okay. Now, granted, Verdum made $400,000 for that performance on Saturday night. It's a lot of money to pass up.
That is a lot of money.
To take on the number 18 guy
but
or whatever.
Also,
but
if he was going to drop off that card, the pay-per-view buys had not been fully purchased. Those orders weren't all the way through. Yeah. So, that could have affected a lot of buys, without that fight.
Could have. I don't know that a lot of people were sitting there looking at that pay-per-view going, man, I got to see Fabricio.
But I think that name tips the scales for me anyway.
That's one of the benefits. Well, that's what the UFC does different than a lot of their places is they typically stack a pay-per-view. So even if you're not into, the main event is always going to be what sells the most. When you go see UFC 217, yes, there are 3 title fights. But I would say, if you're carving out, in pieces, I would say at least half the people or probably more are primarily saying, I want to see GSP's return. I want to see the fight with Bisping, that kind of thing.
100%.
And that's not, obviously, like me personally, like the fight I'm most excited about on that card is Cody Garbrandt and TJ Dillashaw, but I'm not the guy the UFC's targeting to buy pay-per-views. I'm going to buy it regardless. But yeah, so the main event is always going to be what sells the event. But when you're getting your group of buddies together on a Saturday night and you're debating on whether or not you want to spend that $60, you may say, Tony Ferguson, Kevin Lee's pretty good. And yeah, Demetrius Johnson's probably going to kill this guy. But that Verdum, Derek Lewis fight is pretty solid. It tips the scale. You're like, okay, this is a good enough card. 3 good fights, I can buy the pay-per-view. And you lose one of those fights, you might lose some people. You're right. You might lose a few people. But Verdum stuck around. Good for him. He got paid $400,000 for that work, which is good for him. But it's still a dangerous fight because guess what? If Walt Harris comes out there and Seth Petrozelli's him, you know what I mean? Then Walt Harris's career is made. He's now a top, 5 or 6 heavyweight in the world. And Verdum loses 2 in a row. He's 40 going on 41. Does that guy ever get back to a title shot? So there is danger in there. Even though you think there's no danger, there's always danger. When a dude that big as Walt Harris is throwing punches at your head, there's danger.
Is there anyone as good as Demetrius Johnson? I mean, the guy goes from a suplex, transitions to an armbar, gets the victory over a very hard-fought Ray Borg. I mean, that guy did not want to tap, and kudos to he's going to be back. I don't know if he'll ever beat Mighty Mouse, but I mean, that was just a tremendous victory. I mean, maybe the greatest victory submission-wise I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's up there. It's up there.
Submission-wise.
Yeah, it's up there. It's right there with craziest submissions I've ever seen witnessed in person. It's up there with Nick Diaz pulling off the Goga Plata against Gomi, which eventually got overturned, which was stupid. But that one, Ronda Rousey pulling up that armbar against Kat Zingano and that crazy
from the bottom,
scramble.
yes,
So that was a good one. But yeah, this was nuts. I mean, suplexing a guy and then literally that looked like something out of pro wrestling.
My question is, I would love to get high-level black belt's opinion on this. Transitions to what could be thought of as a flying armbar, almost. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, because he was in the air, and I love Demetrius's response in the post presser in the conference where he was talking about how, when you move weight and you push and you pull weight all of a sudden is not actually what it weighs when it's in motion.
Yeah.
When he talks about the specifics of martial arts training, you can tell not only is he getting it from like a true master in Matt Hume, but he himself is seeing mastery. And what we're seeing is literally a guy becoming a martial arts master in front of our eyes.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to see what he does. And he actually said, I practiced that move in training. Yeah, I suplex guys into an armbar transition in training.
Let me tell you something, Damon Martin. I believe that.
No, I do too.
Yeah, I believe that.
But that's what I'm saying. I'm like, holy crap. Like, who does that? Who pulls that off?
That wasn't like, hey, suplex. Oh, maybe I can get an armbar. No, and then you know that.
And if you're the opponent, and we've seen a million guys get suplexed.
Right.
You remember Hustam Khabilov when he first came in the UFC and was chucking dudes over his head?
Yep.
When you're thinking about getting suplexed, you're thinking about not landing on your dome. You're thinking about not breaking an arm or your neck getting thrown backwards. You're not typically thinking, oh, yeah, I got to defend an armbar.
Or you're thinking like, okay, here we go for the ride. Let me just get the scramble off the bounce. And if I can create some space, maybe I can get back up. Maybe I can get – all right, I'll just go for the ride. Oh, my God, is this an armbar? Who the fuck is this?
What is going on here? This isn't right.
Is this Spider-Man? Like, literally, if Demetrius Johnson is not in the next Marvel movie, there's something wrong with the world because that kid is – I think he's charisma, man. I just think he's for fighting, not the guy that some of the hardcores and the more meatheady type fans want him to be. He's not the shit talker. He's not the guy that's going to get in your face and stare you down. I think he's somebody for the younger generation that, obviously with the whole gaming Twitch thing, he taps into that anyhow.
Well, DJ does everything the right way. He is the role model. He is the new version of GSP in a lot of ways. He doesn't get in trouble. He has a family. He has kids. The craziest thing you're going to hear about Demetrius Johnson is, man, he stayed until 3 a.m. playing video games.
Right. And the cool thing is like, he's respectable about all of that. And he keeps the Bushido code with all of that being said, you know?
Yeah. He's a stand-up guy. Now, that being said, him being the model for mixed martial arts, what you should be, for him hasn't translated into much star power. And it's unfortunate because I said this on Saturday night, I put out a tweet. I said, if you were playing a video game, Demetrius Johnson is the creative fighter with every level up to 10. Like, you just have unlimited resources to make every level 10, like grappling 10, striking 10, wrestling 10. Yes. That's what Demetrius Johnson is, and it's ridiculous. But the things going against Demetrius is, one, he's not that guy, because I think we have that's why I'm a little worried about GSP's return. Not worried about his return as in talent, but like, times have changed. The GSP model of like, he had all of Canada behind him and he just was such a good guy and people just liked him as a person. that culture has changed a little bit to where we have people who are into the Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz, that kind of trash talk, that kind of, that kind of intensity. You don't get that with a GSP fight typically. He's not that guy. He's never been that guy, and he's never going to be that guy. So
I'm not impressed with your performance.
So I'm curious how people, how, it's been 4 years. I mean, a lot changes in 4 years. You know what I mean? It's just like music. Think about what was big.
No, absolutely.
You're in radio. What songs were big 4 years ago that you would never play on radio today?
You're not going to be playing a Sprung Monkey.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
get him out of here.
Well, no, here's like, I'm not bagging on him, personally, but it's like, how often do you hear Limp Bizkit on the radio anymore?
No, it's interesting. And that's like a great example. Limp Bizkit, I always say, is for our generation what Poison was to the people that are 10 years older than us.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you were into it when it was there, and then you're kind of like, all right, it wasn't like terribly gross.
But remember how huge they were? Remember how huge they were at one time?
Oh, yeah. But that's what I'm saying. Like, rock radio doesn't even acknowledge that they exist, much like the hair metal stuff.
And so that's what I'm saying with GSP. Like, has time passed him by in that kind of like nice guy mentality? And that's what DJ has, going against him. But I think the biggest thing DJ has going against, two things that DJ has going against him that are just, one of them he can't fight against, the other one he can. But one is size. And I know people are going to say, well, it shouldn't matter. Well, that's just the nature of the beast. There's a reason why, just like in boxing, heavyweight boxing has always been so much bigger than the guys in the smaller weight classes. It's tougher for people to watch a fight sport where you're looking at a guy who looks like he's, DJ is like 5'2". I'm not saying
I will say, but when they're fighting, though, I mean, it doesn't matter because the guys are the same size. So, like, unless John McCarthy.
It does.
Here's what I think with the smaller guys, you should always have a smaller referee.
Yeah.
Don't put the most giant referee you can find in the cage.
And this is a dead serious thing. My mentor, the founder of MMAweekly.com, Ryan Bennett, used to be the in-cage interviewer in the UFC. He used to do Joe Rogan's job. He would go in and interview the fighters after the fights. UFC's like 30, 31, 32. He eventually got let go from his job. Part of the reason he got let go was because Ryan Bennett was 6'4". And he would stand next to Chuck Liddell, who is 6'1", who is the light heavyweight, beast.
Dude, I forgot who that was until you just said that.
Yeah, 3 inches taller than him. So that's part of it. So that's why you see, like, a lot of times, like, Joe Rogan is a shorter guy. You know what I mean? Like, Megan O'Leary is a shorter person. Like, it's tough to. I did a video interview when I first started MMA Weekly. One of my first jobs was
Brian Stan.
He was one of the bigger guys.
And but tell me that wasn't like kind of weird. Like when
that was.
Here was the weirdest part. Like, you ever see a broadcast where they had Brian Stan, Rogan, and what homeboy's name?
Cormier?
No, the dude, the guy that gives all like the odds all the time, John Anik.
Oh yeah,
John Anik, because Anik and Rogan are,
little.
I love Joe, but yeah, I mean, he'll tell you, they're shorter guys. You know what I'm saying? Relatively, and Brian Stan looks like he's from another planet. Like, who's this fucking guy? Like, standing next to these two normal sized dude, that you got this giant. Like, come on.
So that's part of it, the size thing. And I think the biggest thing with DJ is he has no rival. He has no one. I mean, listen, he was like a minus 1140 favorite going into that fight with Ray Borg. Now, Ray Borg, of course, you always got the upset factor, the Holly Holm thing, whatever you want to say, the upset factor. Somebody, pulls off the upset against the giant favorite. But that's part of the problem when you're going into a fight like that, when you're trying to convince people to buy a pay-per-view, is that, is it really worth buying when it's such a overwhelming majority believe that Demetrius Johnson is going to win that fight? And that also goes to show his talent because he is so good. You're like, I don't need to watch. You miss an amazing armbar to finish, obviously, you know what I mean? But that's part of the problem. When there was talk of the Demetrius Johnson and TJ Dillashaw fight, the intrigue was there, because you couldn't automatically say DJ was going to win. You couldn't.
Right. I like that. But I think what he has done to put a stamp on it in his last two victories, he's gotten finishes where before he was getting criticized for going the distance.
Yeah.
And kind of, letting the fight just go the easy way, you might say. I think that he's finishing fights, and now he's starting to get a reputation, especially with this last finish, is, whoa, how will he finish this time? What's going to happen? And I think that's a positive thing. I think the UFC continues to put him on with other, so they can make like a double co-main is what I'm trying to say. I think that that's a wise move with DJ because it elevates his status as he's rising. And I think, as he rounds out his career, so to speak, in the next 5 to 6, 7 years, whatever it is, I think that he will be at the pinnacle of the sport.
Well, here's the thing, and I'll disagree with you on that. I'll disagree with you for this reason. They've put DJ in a position to succeed before. He headlined like 3 or 4 Fox cards. That's easy. You're not paying for it. It's free on a Saturday night. You don't have to pay for it. You just get to watch the greatest fighter on earth perform. His Wilson Hayes fight was the second lowest rated fight ever on Fox. His John Dodson fights did pretty well, at least the first one. I'm not sure about the second one. Was as big.
Like you're saying, John Dodson gave that air of somebody that was a true contender to the championship.
So that's part of it. He headlined that Fox card against Joseph Benavidez, when he knocked him out, which is a great knockout, you know what I mean? So he's headlined that. He's co-headlined shows with John Jones. He's been a part of those kind of cards. He was on UFC 176. Now, granted, he was the headliner, but Conor McGregor was on that card. When he fought Chris Carriasso, Conor fought Dustin Poirier.
Yes.
But here's the thing.
That's right.
The attention on that fight card afterwards, no one was talking about DJ. Everyone was talking about Conor because Conor was the star. So when people say they don't promote Demetrius Johnson, the UFC, I'm not disagreeing that they couldn't promote him better because they could, because I don't think they promote him the right way in terms of reaching out to his audience, the gamers, the younger generation, those kind of people, you know what I mean? Not just necessarily fight fans. But to say they haven't promoted him is wrong because he has. He's headlined a ton of shows. He's headlined a ton of Fox cards. Those are supposed to be, Fox cards are kind of the ones where you kind of graduate. You know what I mean? Where you graduate you go from Fox, you graduate to a pay-per-view. He's had those opportunities. He's just not drawn a crowd. So I disagree with you in a little bit in saying that he's going to reach there eventually. Because at this point, I'm not saying he never could. I don't want to discount the fact that he could eventually become a draw. I'm just saying that he's had 11 title defenses. None of them have been a draw. So where are we going to figure out that he's going to suddenly become a draw? You know what I mean? Like, I hope he does. I think Demetrius Johnson is the best fighter in the sport today, and he does it the right way. He doesn't cheat. He's clean, and he goes out there and he busts his ass, and he's so talented, and he just dominates people. I love that. But people just don't seem that interested in watching.
Let's talk about the Tony Ferguson against Kevin Lee fight after we have a special guest.
Yeah.
Kevin Lee's coach is on the phone with you.
Yeah, Robert Follis, who is of course Kevin Lee's head coach. I spoke to him on Sunday. He wanted to talk a little bit about what happened over the weekend. Obviously, Kevin had some struggles cutting weight. Kevin came in with the staph infection, which we all found about on Saturday night. Kevin was not in the best shape, still went out there and fought and had a great opening round. Absolutely did. But yeah, we're going to talk to Coach Robert Follis about what happened with Kevin Lee and obviously, the future for this kid, 25 years old, such a bright future. So yeah, let's talk to Coach Robert Follis. I appreciate you taking time to chat with me today. Obviously lots to talk about, man. So I appreciate taking a little bit of time out of what I'm sure is a very busy schedule for you.
Always busy, yeah.
But that's the way you like it. I always tell people it's when the phone stops ringing, that's when you have to worry.
Right. Yeah, this is being a coach for fighters is a unique business. It's a very momentum business. There's not a spot where you can go, okay, I could take off and slow down for a month or two, and when it's fight time, and there's the rotation of fighters in camp is pretty much nonstop. So it's kind of a nonstop, hard to plan time off, thing, and you can't drop the ball on it. If you do, then you start getting way too behind on what you're supposed to be doing, and guys will end up leaving. So it's a unique spot for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've known you for many, many years. It's funny, I was just talking to Anthony Burchak about you last week. We were chatting, and he brought up your name, and I was like, yeah, I think a lot of people forget or don't know, how long Robert's been around the game between Team Quest and Extreme Couture and all the people you've worked with. I mean, you've been around this sport for a long time.
Yeah, this is my 18th year coming up of fighters in the UFC.
Wow. Do you ever think back and be like, wow, I can't believe it's been 18 years?
I really can't. I mean, it's funny when I started, MMA wasn't even MMA yet. It was no holds barred. The sport of MMA wasn't MMA yet. It was, hey, let's see what happens when a wrestler fights a kickboxer. Let's see what happens when a judo guy. So, I mean, really before the sport was a sport, and being a part of one of the guys that helped develop the game into what we take for granted now as a sport is pretty amazing. But at the time, there wasn't any money in it. There was no. I mean, I in the first 8 years I coached fighters, I could have made more money working at McDonald's. Yeah. If it wasn't for having a gym and other things going on the side, it was a very tough go. But it was a labor of love. It was something I was very passionate about, loved doing, loved being a part of. Something I felt that was bigger than what most people could ever be a part of. Being a part of a championship fight camp and getting to the fighters to that level was a really fun thing to do. So it still is.
Yeah,
quite frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we got a lot to talk about. Obviously, let's get right into the meat of the subject, which is the situation with Kevin Lee from this past weekend. I said it on Saturday night. I said Kevin Lee is such a talented kid. He's 25 years old. I said this is like the bump in the road that I'd say it's almost like in a way, watching Canelo, lose a fight to Mayweather early in his career, and watching him go on this run he went on afterwards. You come back, you get better. But I'm just kind of curious as his coach, what you thought of Kevin's performance and what he did out there on Saturday night.
I'm really proud of him. We had some bumps going into it that I think people have kind of talked about, and the first fight at that level at his age, I think we got a little bit hyped up, spent a little too much energy in that, and then we were dealing with some medical infection, and so in spite of that, I feel like first round we followed the game plan. We showed that not only could we be or should we be in this fight, but we can win this fight, and came close to it. Second round, I felt like it was close. Went to Tony a little bit. Third round, I felt like we were on point, and he just kind of gassed out. But like you said, I look at this and I go, there's things that happen in fighters' careers, and they're going to do one of two things. They're either going to pour water on the fire, or it's going to be fuel on the fire. And for Kevin, this is going to be that fuel. He is going to be that guy. Like I have no doubt as a coach for him that we're coming back to win a title before this is over, and in the not too distant future, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me backtrack a little bit, Robert, and let me ask you about the staph infection. Everyone was talking about that after the fight. Can you kind of walk me through, when exactly that flared up and how you guys were dealing with that going into the fight? Because, I don't know, the casual fan maybe that's listening to the podcast doesn't know, but, the staph infection, let's just put it out there, knocks you on your ass.
It does knock you on your ass, and it came up the week of the weight cut. So we weren't, people were like, well, how did he look in practice? And I'm like, well, we weren't practicing with it. It came up the last few days. Quite frankly, fighters getting sick and having things like this pop up with the stress they're putting themselves through in a fight camp is not an abnormal thing. I don't think, and you don't even hear about a lot of them that happen that don't get publicized, or it wasn't seen. It was on someone's ankle and nobody noticed. It was under their shorts. It was, what I mean? It's not like this doesn't happen in the sport. But it does come at a cost, and really big cost of the energy. And we were looking pretty good. We thought we had it managed prior to the weight cut. And I think the weight cut really just kind of kicked it into overdrive. And the day of the fight. And there was really, at that point, there's nothing to do about it. You're going to go out and compete. So, I think it definitely had an effect on the fight. I think it took away some of that cardio. It made the weight cut a little bit harder, and all those things had an impact. And but it's part of the game, and you deal with it. And there's no excuses. It's just part of what happened, and how we showed up, and we lost, and then we'll get back to it and come back to win that title later.
Yeah, and there's no way around something like that, because somebody made a comment on Twitter on Saturday night, and they're absolutely right. They're like, if Kevin Lee would have pulled out with the staph infection, he would have been raked against the coals saying, oh, he shouldn't have pulled out. Why are you pulling out for something like that? So it's kind of a lose-lose situation.
Well, look, some fans, and love them all. They pay, they buy gear. They're why we're here. So they're going to say what they're going to say, and we try not to take too much of that to heart. But you're right. If we fight, people say, well, why'd you do that? And that's your fault. And if you don't fight, then why didn't you fight? And quite frankly, I think if we would have gone to Tony and said, hey, what do you want us to do? And he said, I want you to fight. I don't think there's anybody that didn't want to see that fight happen, including us. And, we tried to make some adjustments. We went out there and tried to finish that fight, and we came up short. But I think you're absolutely right. So it's a lose-lose, and it just is what it is the way I look at it. These things happen. You go in, you compete at your best, and then you let the chips fall where they're going to fall.
Yeah. Let me ask you about the weight cut, because I know Kevin, because I've had this conversation with Kevin. He's talked about, he would love to see a 165-pound division come about. So I know he's a big kid. He's a big kid for this division. But, he's fought at the weight before, and he's looked good doing it. So, again, this is not my job to make excuses. I'm just asking the question, how was the weight cut, and how much did that staph infection kind of play into what we saw, unfold on Friday?
Well, here's the thing. How do you measure that?
Right. It's true.
I can make up stats. It's 86.4% of all statistics are made up on the spot. Kind of Knowing how we've normally cut, I would say it had an impact. I think it slowed things down. I think it made it harder for that weight to come off. I think it affected him physically a little bit more. But really, at no point were we done sweating. I mean, as soon as they told us to go back and cut, we went back and kept right on sweating. It just took a little bit longer than we thought. We actually allowed some extra time. We cut a little bit earlier than we normally do, and his body just wasn't responding. So, we have notes from every weight cut we've ever done. I mean, we know down to the minute what we've done in every camp, and we've got a pretty solid piece. But it's what weight cutting is an art that uses science, but it's still an art. It's never exact because you don't know how the body's reacting. You got an infection, you've got things going on with hormones, or you know what I mean. And it's just not always exactly the same.
Yeah.
So my take is it had an effect. How much? It's hard to say exactly, but knowing what we've done without it, it seemed to have a pretty good impact on what we were doing to make that weight on time.
Yeah, well, and I know because, as I said, I mean, he's made the weight before and he looked good doing it. You know what I mean? So it definitely didn't look like Kevin from past fights cutting weight. I guess the best way I could say it.
No, and we felt the same way. We were kind of in that mode where we're like, what the hell's going on? And we thought we had the infection enough under control, but it really ballooned up after that weight cut. I think it played a role in it for sure.
Yeah, well, that's like if you're sick, it's just like anything else. It's like if you're sick and you're not eating, you're not taking in fluids, whatever it is. I mean, that illness, whether it's staph infection or a flu, it flares up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the human body reacting.
Yeah.
Now, I know
sure.
And I know you've talked about this, and I don't want to get too far off the subject, but I know you've talked about weight cutting. Again, you said you've been in the sport for 18 years, so you know weight cutting very well. I mean, what is your opinion where we're at with weight cutting in the sport right now? Because there's so much discussion right now, and I'm sure you've seen, some of these weight cuts that go on there, guys are literally being dragged onto the scales and things like this. I mean, where is your head at right now with where we're at in weight cutting in the sport?
People talk about adding weight classes, but I just see that extending the problem. As soon as you extend the weight class, people are going to get bigger and they're going to cut it just as much weight. This is really a commission issue, and the commissions really need to kind of pull together and figure out a way across the board where it's consistent and it's safe for the fighters. I mean, a commission's job, their number one objective is fighter safety. Of all the things that I do with my fighters, the most dangerous is knockouts. But we can work to avoid that. It doesn't happen all that time. You know what I mean? But every fight we have to go through a weight cut to remain competitive in a weight class. Because people are like, well, you don't have to weight cut. And it's like, well, yeah, then you're giving up 15 pounds of muscle to someone else. There's a reason there's weight classes. So I feel like the commissions really, I would love to see them. And I know there's people that want to. You get these things. They're huge. They're government, and it takes time to make changes in these things. But I would really love to see them make it a priority. To work together and come up with a system where people can't cut too much weight and those things get toned down to where how much you can sweat isn't a big factor in how well you fight. I mean, quite frankly, the fact that the weight cut becomes such a deal, so important on how well you sweat, how fast you can rehydrate, how your body handles it. I mean, don't we just want to see people come in at their best and fight?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so for me, I really feel like the weight classes don't matter because they're just going to extend. The thing that's going to happen is, like what ONE FC has done, where they've got you get weighed throughout the week. You can never be over the weight once, and if you are, they cut the fight. And people say, well, we'll lose fights. Well, we're losing fights due to weight cuts anyway.
Yeah.
So it's and I think once people have that standard, I don't think it'll be that big a deal. I think people will know where they need to be. They'll get used to staying there, and then we have fighters at the same weight fighting each other, and then we just find out who's the better fighter. I mean, after doing this as long as I have, I can tell you honestly, I mean, I don't like losing, but it's part of the sport, and you're accepting of it. It's just you're gonna have some losses. But the one part that I absolutely don't like being a part of and don't like doing is the weight cut. And I'm good at getting it done. I'm good at helping my guys through it, but I would love to take that out of the equation.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with you 100% on the weight classes because I said this to somebody else. I said if you create a 165-pound weight class, And I agree, guys like Kevin and maybe, Khabib Nurmagomedov, those would be guys that benefit. But then you got to think about the guys at 170 who are killing themselves already thinking, hey, maybe I could cut 5 more pounds. Maybe I could get down. Yeah. And those are the guys who are now suffering. So there's no easy answer when it's just more weight classes. Guys are still going to try to kill themselves to get down to that weight. That's just part of it.
As long as you have that day before weigh-in and the ability to cut weight, people are going to do it.
Yeah.
You have to take that off the table with rules and like I said, ONE FC's done it. I know California's toying with some ideas to make that weight cut not so extreme. All those things anything is better than what we're doing right now.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think in your head, as a coach and as a guy who obviously cares about Kevin, I mean, Kevin has said, he would like a 165-pound weight class. Dana has made it clear they're not going to create that weight class. But do you believe Kevin is still best suited for lightweight, or would you like to see him test welterweight? Just out of your own
we're gonna have to go back and talk about that as a camp. If he moves up, he's gonna he'll bulk up a little bit anyway. And we haven't really talked about that, and I haven't talked to him about it since then. I don't really have an opinion on it one way or the other. I mean, for me, the biggest thing is we're in a sport that's a business, and really what we want to look at is what weight class is going to give him the best chance to continue to move on. And if the weight cut can be adjusted and we can get back to what we were doing before, and it's not that big a deal, great. And if we need to move up to 170, then we'll do that.
Yeah. See, that was my opinion.
I haven't really put a lot of thought into that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just, reactionary to the moment. It was it was a tough weight cut. He was sick. That's why a lot of times I almost hate asking those questions right after a fight to a fighter, because you're emotional. You're dealing with the everything that just unfolded, and you're just not.
Yeah, I mean? How many fighters have we heard say they're going to retire and then they don't? How many? You know what I mean? This is it for me. I mean, it is an emotional time, and there's a lot going on, and there's things playing. And like I said, I've never heard Kevin talk about going up to 70. We've talked about the 65 if they put that in. We'll just have to wait and see what happens with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Robert, there's always a million things you got going on. I don't want to tie you up too much, but obviously you're always, a billion things going on with Extreme Couture and the other guys. I'm going to ask you a very broad question, because I'm sure you got 50 different things, but who else do you have coming up in the next few weeks? Because as you said, there are no real off days for coaches.
Yeah, well, we've got Boston Salmon making his he fought on the Contenders and got a spot. We're looking for a new opponent for him, and there may be some things in the works. That opponent who had to pull out. So we've got him. Brian Caraway's getting into camp again right now. We've got Tim Elliott that's going into camp. Ryan Benoit's come out and started training with us. He's got a fight coming up. He's in camp right now. I mean, there's just it's so stacked, it's ridiculous. We got a ton of great fighters, a great crew of coaches that work with everybody. I mean, we're ridiculously stacked right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to see Brian back in. I haven't talked to Brian in a little while, but I'm excited to see him back in action. I know he's been anxious to get back in there after dealing with that back injury last year. I know he's excited to get back in there, so I'm excited to see him back.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. He's a talent. I'm excited to get him healthy and back in training hard. He's in working right now. I mean, we just had a great workout this morning, and we're pushing hard for this fight coming up. So I'm super excited. I mean, he's a very talented fighter.
Absolutely. Robert, thank you so much for taking the time, man. It's always a pleasure. Always love hearing your insights. As I said, man, you've been around the sport. No one knows what you know, so I appreciate taking the time. Look forward to catching up again in the future, man. Best of luck with everything coming up in the next few weeks.
I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
All right, man. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Awesome combo with the coach. I mean, let's be honest. Kevin Lee has to go to the next weight division. Even he said so. He's got to go to 70, right?
Well, maybe. Here's the thing. It's the argument of, is he going to be as good at 170 as he was at 155? I mean, you kill yourself, and that's the weight cutting, problem. Is that bigger guys can cut down and become a force of nature at a smaller weight class, but they're going to be undersized. Kevin Lee's 5'9".
Now, we have a lot of inside sources. Usually you're at the fights and at the weigh-ins. You were not able to be there this time, but from your inside sources, what do you hear? People saw him that day. I mean, nervous. I mean, scared for him.
Just struggling to make weight. And, he had a staph infection that left him sick. Anyone that's ever had a staph infection and goes on antibiotics will tell you how bad that is. It's just as bad to have a staph infection and not actually, have the antibiotics. But yeah, he was struggling to get down to weight, and he eventually got there. But it's one of those things when you're a big guy And remember, it's the title fight, so you don't get that 1 pound allowance. You know what I mean? So he can't come in at 156.
And he came in a pound under, right?
Yeah, he came in a pound over, and then he came in a half pound under. Yeah.
It's just crazy. I mean,
But so it's unfortunate.
20 pounds almost?
What?
Altogether in a day?
Yeah, he lost, I think he said 19 pounds.
Fucking crazy,
Yeah.
Damon.
And here's the argument, and before we talk about Tony Ferguson and Kevin Lee, I got in this big discussion on Twitter the other day because Kevin Lee was, advocating for 165-pound weight class, and I keep seeing people saying they need to add more weight class, it'll fix weight cutting. That will not fix weight cutting. And I'll explain to you why. And tell me if I'm wrong here, Loper. Creating new weight classes does nothing but you shallow out the divisions because the talent pools get thinner for every division when you create more divisions. So here's the thing. Everyone says you need to create more weight classes to curb the weight cutting problem. Okay. So let's say we create 165. Okay. We created 165. Kevin Lee goes up. Maybe Khabib Nurmagomedov goes up. Okay, man, that's awesome. They don't have to cut weight anymore. But what about the guy? I'm just making this up. I'm not saying he actually is going to cut down, but let's just say a guy like, Thiago Alves or Mike Perry. They're bigger 170ers, but they're not the biggest. They're not quite as big as...
Yeah, no, that's a good point. They're not Damian Maia.
They're not Tyron Woodley. They're not quite that big.
Yeah.
You know what? I could cut 5 more pounds. I get down to 165, and now they're the ones killing themselves to get down to 165. You see what I'm saying? Creating more weight classes is not the answer. For all the guys you're going to benefit, let's say you create a cruiserweight division, which is 195, from 185 to 205. Because that's the big jump. That's the 20-pound jump. That's the biggest jump between divisions. Okay, great. So the Luke Rockholds of the world, who are struggling right now to get to 185, they go to 195. Awesome. You know what I mean? But then you have guys let's just say, I'm making this up, but let's say Oven St. Preux says, you know what? I can cut 10 more pounds.
No, that's a great point.
I can get down.
Yeah.
So not only
Jones.
Not only are you diluting 205, which is already a bare bones division. I mean, you have 4 fighters at 205. You know what I mean? You have literally 4 fighters right now, especially John Jones is out.
Give me a number of fighters that are under the age of 35. Quick, go.
Yeah, exactly. So you have right now at light heavyweight, you have Volkan Ozdemir, you have Alexander Gustin, you have Cormier who's 38, you have John Jones who's out, you have Glover Teixeira who's 38 going on 50. These guys are not going to be around much longer, and now you're going to dilute that division even further.
I saw Hackelman online doing some stuff on Instagram look better than Glover Teixeira in his last fight. I was like, man,
so
Hackelman's 60.
So not only are you diluting a division to go down to 195, but then think about the guys at 205 who are saying, you know what, I can make 195, and then they kill themselves to get down to 195 because that's the whole point of weight cutting. You want to give yourself a competitive advantage. Creating more weight classes is not the answer. The answer to curbing weight cutting, and I'm not saying that there's a perfect science to this, but it's monitoring guys during camp. John Kavanaugh, Conor McGregor's coach, suggested online, constant monitoring of guys where they cannot balloon up over a certain weight. If you fight at 155, you can never be over 170 in camp. If you are, then they make you move a division because once you get to 175, it's just too heavy. It's too much weight to cut. And I understand that's going to knock a lot of guys out of their weight class and saying, hold on, I walk around at 180 and I cut to 155. Then you need to get your weight management under control to where you're healthily cutting down to 155. That's, to me, the only way you're going to do it is if you monitor people year round, you're doing constant weigh-in check-ins, and then you have to go to something where you're doing the beginning of the week weigh-in where they have to be within a certain targeted percentage of the weight. Because if Kevin Lee was 19 pounds over on Thursday, he should not have been allowed to cut to 155. And so that's the problem. So creating a new weight class is, yes, you're going to save some people. You're going to save Kevin Lee at 165. But what are you going to do for the guy at 170? What are you going to do for Matt Brown if he looks at this and says, you know what, I could cut to 165. I could make that. And then you see him step on the scale looking like he's on death's doorstep.
Well, you see, it would open up Cowboy would be great for a 65 division. Matt wouldn't be able to make it.
But that's what I'm saying. Yeah. But for all those guys we talk about that would be great for
Vincent Henderson.
You know what I mean? Like a Dos Anjos, who is kind of an in-between guy. You know what I mean? That's
he would
great.
be arguably one of the kings of that division.
Right. But then you have guys at 170 who are bigger, who are not quite elite guys.
No, I understand what you're saying. Totally. Everybody's going to want the advantage.
And that's what I'm saying. You're not going to save anything by creating more weight divisions. You're just not.
Well, they're going to have to take on more fighters. I mean, that's all there is to it. But even that, what you're saying about the upper weight divisions, even in Bellator, they don't even have a heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right. I mean, so a lot of people call for everybody used to love the super heavyweight fights, right? There's no need. Who is super heavyweight? Name one guy. There's no one out there that even wants to fight.
The only guy I remember is Dan Bobish. Remember him from Ohio?
Right, yeah.
Dan the Bull Bobish.
And, Butterbean never fought MMA, but
He did fight MMA. Yes,
Did he?
He did. Remember Yama pit fighting? Remember?
Oh my God, Yama pit fighting was my one favorite pay-per-view ever. Like that, I remember
the bowl because he got tackled and he rolled down the side of the Yama bowl.
Dude, I had this sick apartment in West Palm and I just moved into it, right? And that was, when you're decorating your place, you want something on that's awesome. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, Yama fucking pit fighting. I'm like, sign me up. Well, so what? Let me just remember. So that was like the thing. Was it on a slant almost?
Yeah, it was a bowl. It was basically a bowl. They were trying to prevent. Prevent people from being like stuck against the cage. So they put it on like a slant. Yeah. So it was like you couldn't tackle a guy against the cage. You'd roll back down again. It was the weirdest. It was so bad. And then they had that guy. What was that guy's name? The radio guy, Scott.
Farrell.
Scott Farrell. And he's like.
Everybody.
He introduces the fighters. He's like, you know him, you love him. He's the guy. Yeah. When he introduced Rico Rodriguez, because that was right after Rico had he had done Celebrity Rehab. Remember that episode of Celebrity Rehab where he got in a car crash and he put his fiance in the driver's seat? Like she was knocked out from the crash and he put her in the driver's seat to make her take the blame.
Totally.
And so in the pay-per-view, I remember Scott Farrell's like, you know him from Celebrity Rehab. He put his girlfriend in the driver's seat when he crashed the car. Rico Rodriguez.
Dude, that guy was the fact that guy was able to parlay that whole voice and career into a talk show was fucking unbelievable. I mean, Tom Leykis always had like a really weird voice, but like that guy was the most. There's another guy that was like in rock radio, this dude named Ricker, and he was like the same kind of like voice.
His name was Ricker?
But like, yeah, so like that dude, like you can imagine like in small doses, like, oh, what's up, everybody? It's like Wolfman Jack or something, like. In between songs, Van Halen, you know what I mean? Like, all right, cool, now you're off the radio. But like that dude did a full talk show. Like, all right, open phones. All right, we gotta talk about some salary. And I know dudes that know him. And I guess it's legit. That's his voice. I mean, to a certain extent, obviously, he puts it on a little bit.
Good for you, though, I guess. But yeah, so somehow we got on Yama pit fighting there. But so. The weight cutting thing is a problem. It is absolutely an issue, but weight classes are not the answer. There's answers out there. There's monitoring answers. There's constant weigh-in answers, but more weight classes are not the answer. To that point, though, Kevin Lee did go out there and put on a hell of a first round, mounted Tony Ferguson, looked like he was going to take advantage of it, couldn't get the finish, and then Tony took over. Credit to Tony Ferguson for surviving a tough first round where he got taken down and mounted.
Oh, yeah.
And then he comes back and pulls off the triangle choke and, pulls off the submission, looked, tremendous later in the rounds.
I mean, this was like one of the first real shots that you could see that Eddie Bravo Jiu-Jitsu, that 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu really being effective in mixed martial arts to a high level in a championship fight. And I think that is what Eddie Bravo has always tried to show with 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. You saw the mission control. You saw him set up rubber guard. You saw him, go from position to position. And it's kind of cool to see some of that stuff unfold in the fight. The leading up to the fight, the trash talking was so crazy.
Yeah.
You just knew the bad blood was going to bring out the best in both of these guys. And, you wonder how much the weight cut did play into like Lee's performance. You hope that it wasn't so much and you did get the best of both guys, but obviously, like we heard earlier, maybe that's not true. So.
Well, here's the thing. Tony Ferguson, in my opinion, is the most well-rounded fighter we have at 155 pounds. Is he the best guy at 155? We'll find out. If he eventually fights Conor McGregor, we'll find out if he is the best guy.
So Dana says that's the only fight to make.
I don't believe that.
What do you think? You don't think? You still think the Nate Diaz fight?
Conor and Nate, yeah. Listen, Dana can say. I mean, as soon as I put the tweet out on Saturday night and I said that Dana says this is the only fight to make, everyone's like, okay, go ahead and book Conor versus Nate 3. It's happening. But listen. I mean, come on now. I mean, Dana says a lot of things. Dana said quite a few things in post-fight press conferences that never actually end up coming true. Heat of the moment, it's always like, prisoner of the moment. Tony Ferguson looked outstanding. He pulls off a big win. You're hoping you can do it. But listen, facts are facts. Conor McGregor fighting anybody at this point is going to do over 1 million pay-per-view buys. Conor and Nate is going to do 2 million pay-per-view buys. And if you don't think that's a big difference in the back end of what the UFC is making and what Conor's making, you're out of your mind. Conor against anyone maybe does 1.1, 1.2 million because it's Conor. Conor versus Nate does 2 million at this point, even though their two other fights did about 1.5, 1.6 million. With Conor coming off that Mayweather fight and Conor and Diaz the rivalry, the next time they fight will do 2 million buys. I guarantee it. And that's a big difference. I mean, we're talking about 600, 700,000 pay-per-view buys difference. That's a lot of money.
What about Malignaggi? You think he's out of the question, out of the picture?
Please, can we just never mention him again?
I would like to. I mean,
ever. Did you see my tweet about him last week? But I put up like 5 of his tweets where he's still tweeting about Conor, and I just put up obsessed with like the definition of obsessed.
Did you tag him?
No. I just want to see people see if they know what I'm talking about, because I'm just like, dude, let it go already.
That guy's like, it's a different level. Well, I mean, he's trying to get that fight. He wants that fight.
Well, here's the thing. I don't blame him for wanting the fight. My problem with Paulie in this whole situation is that the guy has like 190,000 followers on Twitter, so he has a lot of responses he can come back with. You know what I mean? And I understand he's probably getting 80% of his responses are about Conor, but the fact that he just keeps going after it, it's like, this is the only analogy I can give you. It's like Cormier with John Jones. I'm quite sure, even though John Jones tested positive and the title's back in his pocket and, all this stuff's going on, Daniel Cormier with 280,000 followers or whatever he's got on Twitter, I guarantee you about 90% of the tweets he gets every day are people saying, you shouldn't be the real champion, you never beat John Jones, blah, 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 blah. Does he go on Twitter and spend hours, seemingly, responding to those people? No, but Paulie Malignaggi apparently just has all the time in the world to respond to nothing but the Conor haters. And listen, I don't blame him for being upset that all the Conor people are coming back saying, you got beat up in sparring, you wouldn't have a chance against Conor, blah, blah, blah. I get all that. I get the frustration.
Maybe
you answer it once, or maybe twice, and let it go.
Well, maybe you understand it if it's August.
Yeah.
We're
in October.
It's fucking the middle of October, man.
Yeah, let it go. Anyways, Conor and Tony Ferguson to Conor McGregor is a tremendous fight. And I really hope we get to see it. I just don't think we're going to get to see it next. I truly believe Tony Ferguson is the most well-rounded mixed martial artist at lightweight. He's a tremendous wrestler. His submissions are off the charts. His striking is good. I mean, he outstruck Rafael dos Anjos for 5 rounds. And Rafael dos Anjos is no joke on the feet. You know what I mean? So, Tony Ferguson is as good as advertised. But is he going to get Conor? I don't think so.
Time to play Get Your Reaction. I'll read something. You give me your reaction, Damon. Uncle Creepy granted his release by the UFC.
He's not going to get paid what he wants.
He's asking for
$100K, $50K
50 to win, 50 to show.
Not going to get it.
He's now getting, what, 16?
I think he said like 6. I think he said 20 and 20 maybe, 16, something like that.
Former world champion?
In Tachi Palace fights, yes. I like Uncle Creepy. Ian McCall's a very good dude. But,
we saw him in Cleveland.
Yeah, very good dude. But, I mean, maybe Ryzen will pay that, the Japanese organization.
Hey, that's a good call. I didn't even think about that.
I don't know if they'll pay him $100K. I think people have like unrealistic expectations of what people can make in this industry, because when Bellator released their pay sheets recently in California and stuff, people saw like Benson Henderson made like 30 grand or whatever, 50 grand, and they're like, hold on, that's not like made it sound like he was making $200,000 a fight.
But the big difference
is the sponsors. I understand the sponsors, but I'm just saying the money in mixed martial arts is out there. The UFC is the one organization who should be paying the athletes more. They have the money to pay the athletes more. I don't know that Bellator does based on the ratings they get and based on being on free TV versus pay-per-view.
You mean based on what they're bringing in?
What their revenue is, yeah.
Right.
Maybe they're not, they do pay some of the guys. I'm quite sure Rory McDonald and some of the other guys are getting paid. But I don't know what Ryzen is doing. And, Ryzen is following that same model as Pride and Dream, where they're putting on these big fight cards and they're paying people a lot of money. But where's Pride at right now? Where's Dream at right now?
Right, but they're not happening as often, which I think is sort of a better model for those organizations. Like Bellator, they don't do their big events all the time. And I think the more Bellator stays away from pay-per-view, the better.
It is. But that's what I'm saying. When people, I understand, like, If I'm frustrated, if I'm Cub Swanson and I'm frustrated that I'm not making a lot of money, I get it. Cub Swanson's 22 fights into his UFC career.
Right, yeah.
He's a top 5 guy.
On the cusp of world championship.
Yeah, I get it.
On every fight.
I get it. I do get it. And the UFC is the one organization who should be paying their fighters more money. I absolutely agree with that. Does everyone deserve that money? No. I'm not going to lie to you and say they do. Because the guy who is the curtain jerker on the first fight of the night, I'm sorry, he doesn't deserve to make as much as Cub Swanson.
I'm right here.
But Cub Swanson deserves to make more. So UFC is the one organization who can really afford to pay more. But Ian McCall, who I like very much, $100K? I know you're going to get that, man. I'm just being honest.
Bud is out. Modelo is in. UFC for 2018. The UFC rolls on with a new beer sponsor. What do you think about that?
Interesting. Bud, of course.
We've seen it all over boxing for years, Modelo.
Yeah, Modelo Especial.
Yeah, they're the second largest import behind Corona.
Yeah. Interesting. It's an interesting move. We'll see. I mean, it is weird because Bud Light is kind of the gold standard of beer sponsorships. I mean, they're like the NFL, that kind of thing, but they're getting paid, more power to them. I do know this, and this is a little bit of information that a lot of people may not know right now. A couple fighters have individual deals with Bud Light and Budweiser. Cowboy Cerrone.
Yeah, I know about him. And who
Conor.
else?
Conor McGregor has a Bud Light deal. I talked to both of their managers yesterday, and they both said that their deals will continue. So, Cowboy's deal is separate from the UFC. He didn't, his deal was not through the UFC.
But we were also told originally that these deals would happen.
Yeah.
Like Cowboys, Budweiser.
Yeah.
We would often.
Yeah.
Well, when they announced the Reebok sponsorship, they said, hey, these other corporate sponsors will be with the UFC.
Yeah.
And possibly others on one-off athletes.
Yeah. But now, how does that play out in the octagon? Because obviously they will not be able to wear those patches on their shorts once Modelo Especial starts in 2018.
You think so?
Bud Light will not. No, Bud Light's not going to be anywhere. Cowboy can't advertise Budweiser.
You don't think they grandfather him?
No. So how long does Budweiser stick around with a guy like that? Conor, you can make more sense because Conor can do TV commercials and, Conor's the biggest name in the sport. You get Conor, then, you don't need the octagon.
You don't think they let him do a trunks?
No chance in hell. That's a Vinnie Mac right there. No chance. What is it?
You got no chance.
No chance. That's what you got.
No. You're fired.
Exactly.
Take off your shorts. Let me see you with no shorts. Bare ass.
Cowboy Cerrone's got to join the Kiss My Ass Club.
Do me a favor, Cowboy. Shave it bald for me. Shave it bald for the boss. Always turns weird with Vince. It's like fucking, why do you have to shave? Just made him take his pants off.
Bradley Cooper playing Vince McMahon. Did you see that rumor?
Yeah, I think that's, I don't know.
I think they're going to have to call you to figure out how to do the Vince McMahon voice. And Bradley Cooper's going to come in and ask for your advice.
What's the thing that, that hangs down at the back of your throat? What's that called?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Got to make sure that thing's flying at all times, man. That's the key to that voice.
You're fired.
Yeah. One other reaction I want to get from you. What was the other reaction that I had? Oh, yeah. So this is kind of strange, man. They're saying that with the GSP fight coming up, there's people online that are calling for photos of George St. Pierre, because there's no real photos of George St. Pierre. We haven't seen an updated. Have we seen a real fall 2017 photo?
Well, I mean, he was just at the press conference last week.
I'm talking about shirt off. I want to see what we're looking at there. I don't know.
I can't say that I've specifically gone out and sought out half nude pictures of GSP.
Well, what I mean is, we're talking about a guy that's going up 10 pounds in weight and hasn't fought in how many years?
4 years.
4 years. So obviously the fighter that we remember that always looked pretty shredded is not going to be as shredded for this fight.
Probably not.
So what do you say to those people, Damon?
I say wait till buy your tickets and watch November 4th. I guess. I don't know, November 3rd for the weigh-ins.
With the Doughboy performance? I mean, what am I going to watch? I want to see what we're getting into,
We might be seeing swole up GSP. Remember when The Rock did that movie Pain and Gain? Remember that movie where The Rock is already a big dude? The Rock is already a pretty big dude. But then for that movie, the Pain and Gain movie where he played a weightlifter.
Do you mean where he looked like the Thing?
Yeah, he added on another 20 pounds of muscle for The Rock, who's already nothing but muscle.
Yeah, so George St. Pierre is not going to be able to go on the same diet and supplements that The Rock was on for that movie.
But that's what I'm saying. GSP might come out looking like The Rock. He might come out all swole up. Might see him come out and be like,
he for sure fails the smell test.
Before he was I'm not impressed by your performance. Maybe come November 4th, he sounds like ours. He'll be, I'm not impressed by your performance.
Yeah, exactly. That's how we'll know.
Yeah, he'll come out sounding like Arnold.
All right. Well, there you go. New segment on the show. We'll bring up stuff and then we react to it. Next week, it's my turn. This week, we welcome one of my... Okay, so if I could date fighters, if I wasn't married and she didn't have a giant-ass boyfriend, this would be my girlfriend.
Who would kick your face off.
Yeah, so suppose all those things weren't in the equation. Ladies and gentlemen, my girlfriend, Rose Namajunas.
Hey, Rose, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for taking time to chat with me as always. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
So we talked after your last fight, of course. We all kind of saw this coming, but, you're just a few weeks away. How excited are you to get in the cage and do your thing against Joanna?
It's pretty exciting, man. It's going to be the biggest fight of my career.
I love it. There was a lot of talk, and I know that, there was some buzz going around. I think we all knew this was the fight, but the timing was the question. I'd heard they were trying to make this for UFC 216. I know Joanna wanted it in New York. Like, where were you at? Did you care, like, when it took place, or were you just waiting for the contract?
I wanted it wherever she wanted it, wherever she is going to be. I want to fight the best Joanna possible. So, if she wants to fight in New York, that's where it's going to be. I personally like, I like Vegas. I don't really care for New York too much, but at the same time, I'm down for anything.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? When a fight like this, I mean, when you get on a big card like this, when you get on, what's that?
That's because we can drive to Vegas.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, we can't drive in New York, so
that would be like a Donald Cerrone road trip right there if you were driving cross country.
Yeah.
Is there any part, I guess there's a good side and a bad side maybe of being on a card this big when there are 3 title fights. You got Bisping and GSP, you got Cody and TJ Dillashaw, and then you and Joanna. I imagine none of this affects your training. Obviously, I know that, but I mean the attention on this fight. Like, does any of that matter when you get to a card like this, or is it just really about the fight?
Oh yeah, I don't. Anytime like people have always asked me, like, oh, what do you think about fighting on the same card as yada, yada, yada. I really, most of the time I get to the fight, and I don't even know who's fighting on there, and I get surprised by seeing random people. So it's really none of my concern. Plus, I'm not getting no pay-per-view points. So, all that matters to me is getting the belt, and then all those things will matter later.
Yeah. I think you should get pay-per-view points. I think you absolutely should. This is a big fight. But you win the title. I guess that comes along with being the champion, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. That'll change everything.
Yeah. I know this is such an obvious question, Rose, and I've known you, for a long time. We talked, all the way back even before The Ultimate Fighter. So I know this is kind of a dumb, obvious question, but I got to ask it. When you look at yourself from that first title fight, when you came out The Ultimate Fighter and you fought Carla Esparza, to who you are now walking in against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Can you kind of walk me through the differences? Like, do you recognize that Rose Namajunas from a few years ago?
I kind of laugh at that Rose. I mean, she's so cute. Yeah, I was just a baby, like in the biggest kind of moment for, not just for myself, but probably for any female fighter, athlete, or, I was about to be the youngest champion at that time, and obviously it didn't go that way, but, you're talking John Jones status, like, in only my, few, like, under 10 fight MMA career. So, yeah, it was just a lot, and I'm just grateful for that experience. I'm so grateful that I didn't win that fight and that I didn't come the champion at that time, because I was not going to be ready for that.
Yeah, it's so weird you say. I was actually going to ask that question. Like, I know it sounds like a weird thing to say, are you glad you didn't win the title? Because I know it kind of sounds weird, but it sounds like, maturity-wise and everything, it sounds like you're more ready now versus, like, let's say you had won at that point, what a difference the career would have been. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's definitely, I'm definitely glad that I didn't win back then, because our team, we've, Trevor, Tony, and Pat, and myself have all become such a better team together and as individuals, and just, not just in MMA and coaching and fighting, but just as individuals ourselves, we're there's a lot that's happened since then. So we've grown so much and learned a lot.
Yeah. Well, I know when I talked to you before the fight with Michelle, you told me the little differences, the training, the coaching, just kind of getting everything working the right ways. And it's about finding the right formula, and it's all about timing. It kind of feels like this is the right time. Like, this is the right time for this fight at this moment in your career, because you are hitting it all cylinders. You have kind of found the perfect formula. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm 25 years old. I've finally gotten a place to call home, not just to train, but also to have a place to feel, safe and comfortable, and have a team that I feel is solid, so it's definitely a great contrast, the position that I'm in right now. And not only that, like the whole my environment around me, but just the reasons why I fight, those are becoming more and more clear every day. And I always ask myself, I have to remind myself why I do this. And, I just, the more true to those values that I stick, the more strong I can be.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a question you're going to answer probably, 24 times at minimum between now and November, so I'll hopefully be one of the more recent ones to ask this question. But when you look at Joanna's most recent performances, because I know we talked, I want to say before she fought Jessica Andrade, I think was the last time we talked, right before that fight. What are your thoughts on Joanna, going into this one? I mean, her style has always been kind of similar. She's a striker, very technical, good takedown defense. I don't think there's any secret of what she does well, but I'm just kind of curious, what you've thought of her most recent performances.
I think she's proved that she's the best. Jessica didn't really know what to do against her. Her game plan was just, I'm going to just take everything in the face and keep going forward. And, that obviously doesn't work. So every time Joanna fights, I learn something new. And, we can see that she's, over her career, I think we've noticed, or you can kind of notice a slight change in her style of striking. She's has a little bit more movement rather than just stand in front of somebody and, set up her, super crazy overhand rights that would come from hell. Whereas nowadays it's more of she picks you apart and is more methodical, I think. And so I don't know if that just comes with age and experience or whatnot, but she's obviously proven that she's the champ and that she's worthy of it.
Yeah, this is such an obvious question, but there is still some analysis to be done around this, because Joanna's undefeated, she's the champion, but do you feel like people have just fought her the wrong way? And I as I said, I know that's obvious because she's won every fight, but you know what I mean. Do you feel like people are just approaching her with the wrong game plan, the wrong mindset? I mean, she's good. Don't get me wrong, she's absolutely amazing, but you know what I mean. Do you feel like people just aren't fighting her the right way?
I don't know if it's so much as I definitely think that there's a lot of wrong approaches that people have going into the fight. I think that they lose the fight before it even starts, and you see that with all the greatest in the world, or all the greatest of all time. They all have this intimidation factor, and it's for a reason. It's not just they just play mind games. It's they can smell it off of them. They're not joking around. So I think that a lot of the opponents that she's faced, not all of them, they're afraid of her, and it shows. But also, I think with the last one, I think just because she needed that experience to evolve, and you could see that in her last fight, she's gotten a lot better. So, I think most of the time people they don't know what to do because they're, this is Joanna, and oh my gosh, they're afraid. But then two, I think people just they automatically, I think they just have a what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, one-dimensional approach.
Yeah. Well, that leads me perfectly into my next question, Rose, because, and I don't mean this in any way, shape, or form as offense to her past opponents, but do you feel like you are the toughest challenge in terms of your style that's faced Joanna, because when you look at, when someone hasn't been able to get her down, Jessica Andrade actually has a really strong ground game. We saw that against, in her last fight, of course, against Claudia, but you mentioned she just kind of went straight forward and, just tried to kind of bum rush her, and it didn't work, and then she didn't seem like she had a backup plan. We saw in your last fight, you've developed your striking a long way over the last few years. You head kicked Michelle Watterson, and then you choked her out. So you kind of have all weapons now. Do you feel like, you are kind of, you're not a cocky person, but do you kind of feel like you are the toughest challenge in terms of styles that she's faced?
I'm definitely the most complete fighter she's ever faced. So I have that going into it. I have the previous title fight experience going into it. So I have a lot of things going for me. But really it all comes down to, it comes down to desire and want and what is my reasoning behind what I'm doing. So, and when I have those things in mind, it's really, I snap into myself. I become something that is just, it's a work of art, and it's really, it's hard to touch.
Yeah. You mentioned when you look at cards, you kind of show up on media day, you're like, hey, there's this guy fighting on the same card as me. So, you kind of keep to your own space leading into a fight. But, people are going to ask you the questions, reacting to what Joanna says. And I'm not specifically asking you things she said about you, but about her career. Now, people ask her questions. I ask her questions. What comes next? You're going for your 6th title defense. That's a record, tying performance. What about flyweight? Listen, I don't fault her for answering those questions, but she is answering those questions. Is there any part of you that feels like Joanna is looking past this fight a little bit and some of the comments she's made, or do you feel like she's just answering the questions that are being asked of her?
Yeah, no, I don't. I haven't really. I think I've maybe heard the general statements that have been made, but I don't really look too far into it because I haven't really heard her say anything as of lately. I've been offline pretty much. If she says that, she's talking about 125, I mean, I don't think that's looking past me. I think, she used to fight at 125, and she hasn't shown any signs of, she's not looking past me.
Yeah. When you mentioned, one of the things that Joanna does so well, and I actually had this conversation with her, was, when she gets, into fight week, she likes to intimidate her opponents, to stare down, the face off. She talks a little trash, in the thing. She did it to Carla Esparza. She did it to a couple people, and I absolutely believe in the back of my mind that it got to certain people. You don't seem phased in those moments. I mean, do you feel like that is an advantage mentally, that she can say what she wants to say, she can give you that mean mug, that kind of stuff. But I don't know. You tell me, but it just doesn't feel like you ever play into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we're practicing every day we're not just doing the reps, we're not just doing the physical labor and all this other stuff like the technique and whatnot and game plan, but we're constantly working on improving mental strength, and that's something that needs to be practiced. It's not just something that it's just I'm mentally strong or mentally weak. So every day I'm working on just being more in touch with myself, more in my own skin, and the more comfortable you are with yourself and really who you are, and when you're true to yourself, it doesn't matter what anybody says, what anybody does. You won't get rattled. So that's what we're working on, is just making sure that I'm ready. So nothing that she can do. We're just looking forward to a good ass fight.
Yeah. You've been such a ferocious finisher throughout your career, Rose. You started your career, you burst on the scene as a pretty, emphatic finisher, but you have gone into the deep rounds. You went you went deep in the 5th with Paige Van Zandt. You've gone to decision before. I know Joanna has finished people, so I'm not taking that away from her, but she has had a lot of 5-round fights recently. If people were looking at this fight, they might say, oh, well, I could see Rose, submitting Joanna, but if it goes 5 rounds, it kind of favors Joanna. Not only are you ready, but I mean, do you feel very confident that if this fight goes the distance, that you're ready to beat Joanna, whether it's a 1-round fight or a 25-minute fight?
With every fight, the way that it always goes for me when I'm ready is punch them in the face, take their back, choke them out. And so if it happens somewhere along the line before that happens, like before those stages come to the finish line, that's what's going to happen. But I'm ready for I'm ready for the ABC, you know, punch in the face, take their back, and choke them out. And I just do what I do best, and everything, the moment will present itself when it's supposed to be there. But, you know, that's not something that, it's like me saying that, oh, this fight, I'm going to go out and be entertaining. You know, that's just what I do. That's not something that I got to think about. Same thing when it comes to finishes. When I control every position and when I take care of, when I address their strengths and, you know, their weaknesses and attack them with my strengths and, you know, protect my weaknesses, then, you know, there's no stopping me.
Yeah. You said punch to the face, but you also mean kick to the face too, right? You got that kick to the face thing down now pretty good too.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. We've been building my base from, you know, the ground up ever since I lost to Carla. So, we've been, you know, that the kicks have just been something that I've slowly been adding back into my arsenal, and obviously it showed in that last fight. And yeah, so just, you know, you better believe that I'm, you know, adding more new stuff all the time.
Yeah. It sounds crazy to say this because you said you're 25 years old. You're still very young. I mean, you've had a lot of experience early in your career, but you're still a very young person. But as you go into this one, and this is going to sound maybe like a little bit of a weird question, but are you ready for this? Are you ready to be champion? Like in your head, are you like, I'm ready for this. I'm ready for this responsibility. I'm ready for this attention. I'm ready for this money. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but there's a lot that comes along with being champion. And I feel like some people aren't really ready for it. Do you feel like in your head right now, beyond the physical stuff, beyond anything else, you're ready to kind of ascend that throne?
You know what? I can't necessarily say that for sure just because I haven't been champion before. So, like, whatever comes my way, whatever God decides to put him on my plate, I know that it's enough for me to handle, or I know that I'm capable of handling it. So whether or not champion is my thing or not, you know, we'll find out. And I just have faith that whatever, you know, obstacles are presented in my way, I will overcome them because I've always have.
Yeah. My last question or my last comment before I get you out of here, Rose, you know, one of my favorite things when you fight and when you win, I always like to see Pat's reactions because he has the best reactions ever in the corner. If you choke out Joanna Jędrzejczyk, is anyone going to have a camera directly on his face? Because I can only imagine what that's going to look like on the night on November 4th. I'm just saying, I think that's going to be a great moment just to see the reaction. I'm saying that's going to be a moment in time.
Yeah. Maybe you should get a camera.
I might have to. I might have to. Well,
yeah, get the GoPro.
I know. Well, Rose, I always appreciate the time. Obviously, safe training the rest of the way. Safe travels out to New York. Hopefully, I'll see you out there. But thank you so much, as always, for the time. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Damon.
All right, talk to you soon.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, the beautiful Rose fighting the beautiful
Joanna.
What do you think?
Tough fight.
I know that Joanna Jędrzejczyk is your favorite, right?
She's awesome. You know, I got to spend a week with her down in Florida for her last camp. With as she was getting ready for Jessica Andrade, she was very welcoming into her camp, and she's an awesome person. It was cool. It was cool to get an inside look like that because Joanna is one of those people who's pretty private. You know what I mean? Like you see her on social media and stuff, but she's not like. You know, she's not like the kind of person who's always out in the spotlight. She doesn't seek out the spotlight. She doesn't seek out interviews.
She doesn't seem like the kind of person like, okay, get me doing this cool thing. You know what I mean? She seems like the kind of person that's like living life. You know? It was
cool to kind of get an inside look at like what she does and how she trains and how she gets ready. And I've been around a lot of fight camps. I've been around a lot of fighters and a lot of training camps. I mean, she is as ferocious in the gym as she is in the cage. I mean, I saw her sparring a guy who was one of her sparring partners in the American Top Team, who was weighing 160, I think he told me when he was sparring with her. She was a 115-pound champion. And he said he's 160 or 150. So he's got to be at least, I mean, let's say she's not cutting weight. She's maybe 130, you know, whatever. So he's 160. He's 30 pounds on her. And she was handling this dude.
No kidding.
I mean, and don't get me wrong. I mean, obviously he had his moments in the training session as well. It's not like he got just, you know, mauled or he wouldn't be in there. But she was handling it. You know what I mean? She's ferocious. As ferocious as you see her in the cage is how ferocious she attacks her training. But Rose Namajunas is an interesting matchup because Rose has improved her striking dramatically. I mean, she lopped off Michelle Waterson's head in that last fight. And And her ground game is so good. She's so long and kind of lanky. She's got those really long arms, good for chokes. Good. I mean, we saw it with Tony Ferguson, really long guy. He's great at Darce chokes, and he got that triangle choke, really long. He's a really long, lean guy. Rose Namajunas is that way as well. She's like an anaconda. Like before you know it, she's on your back and she's wrapping you up. Interesting matchup. I'm excited about this fight.
I am too, man. I think it's a great fight. I mean, this card altogether, even outside of George St. Pierre being back, I mean, there's nothing not to be excited about. And I hate that we're still a couple of weeks away. I mean, and
I talked to Bisping. We're going to have some Bisping stuff on the show.
Oh, cool.
Bisping's a great dude. I texted him. I texted him last week, and because I'll text with Bisping I'll share a text with you that I got. Just like the randomness of text messages I get with fighters. I got a text. Was it 2 nights ago? Hold on, let me look real quick. I got it.
We're going to Damon's
Sunday.
Rolodex.
Yeah, Sunday night, I got a text from Daniel Cormier, because I put up the new Justice League trailer, and he texted me. He's like, you can already see the influence of Joss Whedon in this trailer.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Like when Batman versus Superman came out, Cormier called me the next day, and I was like, I saw DC's calling me, and I was like, what's going on? I was like, answer, hey, what's going on? He's like, hey, did you see Batman versus Superman? I was like, yeah. He's like, give me your review.
You just wanted your breakdown. Well, you do have a hell of a breakdown. If people don't know, nerdcoremovement.com, it's Damon's website for all things nerd culture.
So I talked to Bisping, he's a good dude, really nice guy. I talked to him everything, but he's busy. He did Conan last week, the press conference on Friday, so I texted him last week. And I was just like, hey, man, I know you're like super duper busy, but can you spare some time for me? Can you? And he got right back to me. He's like, anytime, whatever. And so like, he's always gracious with his time. Very good dude. Did you watch the press conference last week with him?
No, I missed that. Yeah.
Oh my God. I was dying. He said something about GSP's, alien encounters. Yeah. And he said, I'm surprised you're not wearing a tinfoil hat right now, motherfucker. And he said, I'm going to hit you so hard, you're going to think you're getting taken back to the mothership. I was dying. I was like, oh my God.
And George St. Pierre, you could just tell George St. Pierre doesn't take that stuff well. He hates that shit, man.
Yeah, he's not built for trash talk, man.
Yeah, he's not playing that shit. So more of our analysis of that pay-per-view coming up on next week's show. And of course, the great Michael Bisping. That should be an awesome
Yeah, we'll
awesome
talk to Bisping. We got 2 more fight cards this month too coming up. We got Poland. We got Cowboy Cerrone back in action.
Yes.
And then we got Lyoto Machida's return to the end of the month against Derek Brunson. So we still got a couple more cards before we get to UFC 217.
The Dragon Era is back! Well, at least Lyoto's back. All right, Damon, at Damon Martin on Instagram and Twitter. I'm at Jeremy Loper. Check out Loper and Randy with an I.com. You can check out my daily radio show, podcast, videos. I do a video vlog, all of that. Damon at nerdcoremovement.com. We'll see you next week. Fight Society.
Go. Check it out.
You're listening to Fight Society with Damon Martin and Jeremy Loper.
Check it out.